The meeting's now live.
Thank you. So welcome to this virtual Planning Control Committee meeting that's been conducted with members and officers at various locations. We're communicating via audio, video and online. There's also the opportunity for the public and press to listen and view proceedings via our YouTube channel. And we also have a number of speakers in attendance. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to confirm that members, officers and registered speakers are in attendance. Thank you, William.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live onto YouTube and recorded via Zoom. I'll start with a roll call. When your name is called, please indicate your attendance to confirm that the required members, officers and speakers are present, can hear and be heard. I'll start with our councillors. Councillor Allen.
Here, Chair, sorry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Bryant.
Here.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Here.
Councillor Hewson.
Here.
Councillor Hunter.
Present.
Councillor Levitt.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Moody. Councillor Ringuala.
Here.
Councillor Prendergast.
Here.
Councillor Rice.
Present.
Councillor Tyson.
Yes, I'm here.
And Councillor Nash as an advocate.
Present.
Thank you very much. Our officers, Nuraneta Katavu.
Present.
Tom Allington.
Here.
Andrew Hunter.
Here.
And Lewis Franklin is assisting us with IT stuff. And members of the public in no particular order, Jessica Hall.
Here.
Jeanette Deards.
Here.
And Stephen Rice. You're muted, Mr. Rice.
Here.
Thank you. Extracts from the remote and partly remote meetings protocol are included with the agenda, and the full version is available on the Council's website, which includes information regarding live streaming, noise interference, the rules of debate, and Part 2 items. Members are requested to ensure that they are familiar with the protocol. I would like to inform members that due to a software update from Zoom, our usual voting procedure has been disrupted and will no longer work. For the purposes of this meeting, votes will be conducted by roll call. When it is time to vote, I will call members' names. If you would respond with your vote yes, no, or abstain verbally, I will then tally the results and announce as usual. Are there any questions before we start the meeting?
Can I just confirm that the raise hand icon still works for when you want to indicate to speak?
It will do that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, I will hand over to the chair, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So moving on to item 2, apologies for absence. We have Councillor Moody. I don't believe there are any substitutions tonight. Item 3, notification of any other business. I have none. Oh, Mike Hewson, did you want to ask a question?
I just noticed you got yes and no under reactions. I don't know, are we not able to use those instead of the previous buttons?
The issue with the Zoom update is that we have no control over which version of Zoom various members have on their various devices because everybody uses a slightly different platform. And in the most recent iteration of the program, those reactions will only last for about 10 seconds. So it doesn't serve as a convenient voting procedure anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for confirming that. That's not very helpful for us, is it? Okay, so I'll move on to Chair's announcements then. So in accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on mod.gov and the film recording via the NHDC YouTube channel. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. And then for our registered speakers, to clarify, members of the public have 5 minutes for each of the groups of speakers, i.e. 5 minutes for objectors and 5 minutes for supporters. I don't think we have more than one for any tonight, but if there are, you have to share that 5 minutes. And then there's also an additional 5 minutes, which is available to the member advocates. A warning will be given at 4.5 minutes to alert you that you have 30 seconds left. And then at 5 minutes, you will be advised that the time allowed has elapsed and you must cease speaking. And then finally, my further announcement, just wanted to make members of officers and members of the public aware that our Principal Planning Officer, Tom Allington, is standing in tonight for Simon Ellis and for Joe Cousins at very short notice. And therefore, he has had very limited time to prepare the item that he will be presenting and may not be able to answer any difficult technical questions. So if we can just bear with that and just be mindful of that, that would be really, really helpful. Item 5, public participation. I have not been informed of any. So I will move on to item 6, which is Flint Hall Farm, London Road, Royston, Hertfordshire. Conversion of existing barn and grain store to provide 2 4-bed and 1 3-bed dwellings. Erection of 2 4-bed dwellings, associated car parking, landscaping, and ancillary works. And I will invite our officer, Tom Allington, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Lewis, could I just ask if you bring up these slides? If you could just move to the first slide, the location plan, please. Thank you. Flint Hall Farm is located to the south of the town of Royston. It's located between the A10 to the west of the site and Barkway Road to the east of the site. Sorry, Lewis, if you could just start scrolling through some of the photographs, I think. Oh, sorry, if you could just stop there quickly. This is an extract from the design and access statement. As you can see, the site includes a number of agricultural barns and buildings. You can see the existing site plan there on the left, and a number of photographs showing the existing buildings. Next slide, please, Lewis. Here we have some more photographs of existing buildings. The top left photograph shows the main barn, which will be converted to 2 4-bed dwellings. That's the main barn, top center as well. The left center photograph, I think, shows the grain store, which would also be retained and converted to a 3-bed dwelling. Lewis, if you can continue, please. I believe this photograph shows the approach to the site. If we can go to the next slide. Again, this is the main barn towards the center of the site, which will be converted to 2 4-bed dwellings. If we can keep going, please. This is the inside of that building. Next slide, please. I believe this is the grain store towards the sort of northern edge of the site. This would be retained and converted to a 3-bed dwelling. Next slide, please. Sorry, keep going. And again, please. Keep going, please. This photograph shows at the top the existing site and plots the existing trees. I believe the ones that are shown in the top picture in red are to be removed. And then the plan below is the proposed plan, which shows the retained trees, which would remain. And it gives you an indication of the proposed site layout. This is effectively a resubmission of an approval from February 2017, which also included 5 new dwellings altogether. Again, we've got 5 dwellings proposed here, made up of the conversion of the main barn towards the center of the site there into 2 4-beds. The grain store is on the to the north of that, behind it, to the center of the site. That would be a 3-bed dwelling, and then plots 1 and 3, which are the northeast and northwest corner plots, as it were, they'd be new builds. They both be 4 beds as well. If you could please keep going, Lewis. Here we have some sort of street scenes. If you can keep going, please. This is the elevations and floor plans for plot 1. So this is one of the new builds. Next slide, please. This is plot 2. So this is the conversion of the grain store, which would sit in the middle of the northern row. Next slide, please. This is plot 3. So this is the second of the new builds, another 4-bed. If you keep going, please, Lewis. These are elevations of the main barn, which is located towards the center of the site. This is what will be converted into 2 4-beds. If we can move to the next slide. And these are more elevations showing the main barn and some of these single-storey elements, which would also make up part of the two new 4-bed houses. So we can move to the next slide, please. And again, this is showing plots, I believe it's 4 and 5, the two 4-beds, which would be converted from the main central barn. You move to the next slide, please. And again, those plots 4 and 5, the conversions. And that brings to a close. So as mentioned, this is a resubmission effectively of an approval back in February 2017 for a total of 5 dwellings, including 2 new builds, 3 conversions. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any immediate questions regarding this report? No. Okay, so if not, I will invite our speaker, Jess Hall, to speak in support of this application. You have 5 minutes. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, councillors, for the opportunity to speak this evening. As you'll see, Flint Hall is a prime example of a 19th century model farmstead and is classified as a non-designated heritage asset. The application is a resubmission of a previously approved application, as Tom mentioned, granting consent for the same scheme as was proposed in February 2017. Due to a number of reasons, it was not possible for the development works to commence before the 3-year period of the original consent lapsed, hence this resubmission. However, Mr. Wilkerson, the site owner, has been careful to retain and protect the traditional buildings to ensure they're not lost, but substantial works are now required in order to ensure their condition does not deteriorate to a point beyond which they cannot be saved. Given they are largely redundant for modern agriculture, as you'll see, without a use, he cannot continue to invest money preserving them. Bidwells were instructed to look for a viable and sustainable solution to preserve and enhance these heritage assets. Firstly, to prevent further deterioration. Secondly, to justify the necessary conversion and repair works. And thirdly, to maintain and preserve the buildings for the long-term future. Commercial uses for the traditional buildings are unsuitable and unviable. As a result, a sympathetic residential scheme has been developed over the last 7 years, since our initial discussions with North Herts officers in early 2012, and has been carefully designed based on discussions with them. The project centres on the proposed restoration enhancement of the historic Tithe Barn and Granary Mill building. However, the cost of converting these historic assets is more than the end value of the conversions. The creation of 2 sensitively designed new build dwellings replacing existing buildings on the site will cover that deficit. The demolition of the various more modern but also redundant outbuildings which detract from the traditional barns will also enhance the setting. Given the local authority at the moment cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the application should be considered in the context of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The site is just 0.2 miles south of the southern boundary of Royston via a public footpath. We've received significant technical input to inform the proposals, and the application proposals have been considered against a number of policy areas established by the NPPF and have been shown to provide a sustainable form of development. The scheme has been developed in tandem with North Herts officers, and we had various pre-app meetings and discussions over the years. The full application was then submitted as a result of positive pre-app advice. We have also had formal pre-application discussions with Hertfordshire County Council to ensure the application is acceptable from a highways point of view. The officers agree the site is sustainable and are recommending granting the permission. The scheme will ensure that the heritage buildings are not only preserved but are maintained long-term and can be enjoyed by the occupiers. Significant thought has been given to preserving the woodland feel of the site where possible, and trees will be kept and maintained. Further landscaping will be agreed with the local authority as a condition of any approval. The proposed scheme is carefully designed, considering the existing character of a farmstead, the current building layout, scale, building materials, and how these buildings relate to the wider landscape have also been considered. The sympathetic designs draw on the architectural features and character of the buildings already located on the site. There are natural curtilages formed within the existing confines of the farm complex, and the development would not extend into the farmland beyond. The design incorporates a number of sustainable features. Overall, there are no adverse impacts that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development. The proposals therefore constitute sustainable development as set out in the NPPF and meet firm planning grounds for the committee to approve the application. The existing farmstead is of historical significance. Sympathetic conversion will present a viable and sustainable use to the buildings, providing an opportunity to restore and secure the long-term future of the barn and granary mill, whilst providing new homes to the district. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, councillors, and thank you to Tom for stepping in for Joe at such short notice. I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jess. Do members have any questions for our speaker? Val, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you for that, Jess. Can I ask you about the bat roosts? Has that been sorted out?
Yes, so as you might be aware, the sort of the legislation and regulations on protected species has changed since the 2017 application. So we were required to do the bat surveys in advance of applying for permission this time. So bat roosts have been proposed within the main tithe barn. You'll see from the floor plans that the central area of the barn, which was considered to have the most heritage value, has been retained as a single open space in between units 4 and 5. And the roof space of that building offers a perfect opportunity for bat roosts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for our speaker? No, in which case I will move to the debate. Who would like to speak? I don't have any hands at the moment. Yes, Councillor Allen.
I move that we approve this as per the previous application.
So the next hand to go up was Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I think I was involved the first time this came around, and I think it's a very sympathetic development. Looks very good. We had a lot of debate about it, and we're very happy with it. So I'll be happy to second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunter. So we have a proposer and a seconder. Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also very much impressed by this development. The question that I had was just one about the electric vehicle charging points. So what I was wondering was that in condition 15, it's more or less now sort of standard text that each of the properties should include an EV-ready domestic charging point. But what I was wondering was that given that there are 2 vehicle parking spaces for each of these properties, and also I think that you need a vehicle to access the site, whether it's time to start asking for 2 charging points to be made available. I think the technology exists for dual charging points. I don't know if the officer can advise us on that at all.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Tom, are you able to advise on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Tyson. As you mentioned, it is generally speaking the standard condition that we apply to most of our residential approvals. It's my view, if you're asking for it, is that it is sufficient. I mean, if a household is lucky enough to have 2 electric vehicles, they can use the 1 charging point. It's my view that it might be a little bit excessive to ask for 2. But if obviously councillors are minded that you do wish for 2, we can indeed vary that condition.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Could I ask the officer for some details about the vehicle access being upgraded? Its width must be 5.5 metres, and about the curbs, I couldn't quite picture what this would look like.
So can I just clarify, are you referring to the access onto the main highway, Barkway Road?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Tom, are you able to respond to that?
I'll do my best, yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just skimming through the report trying to find, I know there are a number of conditions attached with a potential approval recommended by the County Highways Officer, and they are prior to occupation. So before anyone's going to live in any of these 5 houses, essentially the access drive has to be of a suitable width and the suitable vision displays and access has to be in place first. So those 2 conditions, sorry, I'm just trying to track down which conditions they are so I can give you the numbers. I think it's conditions 8 and 9 in the report. they effectively safeguard access. They'll make sure the suitable access is in place before anyone will be living in these houses. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Yes, she's nodding. Okay, I've got Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to double check that if there were extra charging points put in, whether they would actually be able to cope with the amount of power drawn if you had that many cars charging where it is, because obviously that would be a hell of a drain on the system. So I think one on each is probably enough.
Okay, that's quite a technical question. I don't know. Are you able to answer that, Tom, or not? No.
Well, I raised my hand to say, from my limited understanding is that if you have a dual charger, you can charge two cars at the same time, but only at half power each. But the reason that I asked was really in the sense of future-proofing the development, because as the officer said, you might be lucky enough to have two electric vehicles at the moment, but one hopes that the expectation would be that in future people would have more than one electric vehicle per dwelling, and it would be much cheaper to install a dual charging system now than it would be to add one later on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Although I sort of think the electric vehicle charging points are quite important, I think probably at this particular time it could be seen as an unreasonable condition. I know from the plans that the parking spaces aren't necessarily adjacent to a wall or, you know, not to the particular dwelling. I think getting power to them might be deemed to be sort of an unreasonable condition on there. I think it's a great idea to have a electric charging point for every vehicle. But I think it could be, if we took it as a standard sort of condition and tried to apply it to everything, I think it could land us in a bit more trouble as being a non-viable condition, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to say something similar to Councillor Levitt, that I think it would be unreasonable and excessive. But the thing is also, technology is moving so fast. I would imagine in 2 to 3 years' time, what they're putting in now will be superseded by something far superior. And I'll also thank the officer for putting in condition 4, which I think is the permitted development rights being withdrawn in this case, which I think is a very good idea indeed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So does anybody want to support a proposal to put in dual 2 chargers or not? Do I have any seconders for that, or are we going to stick with the one? No hands. Okay, so we've got a proposer and a seconder. So I think we should move to the vote.
Thank you very much, Chair. Voting on the motion moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor Hunter. I will now call councillors' names. If you could respond with a yes, no, or abstain. Councillor Allen.
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Councillor Bryant.
Yes.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Yes.
Councillor Hewson.
Yes.
Councillor Hunter.
Yes.
Councillor Levitt.
Yes.
Councillor Nguala.
Yes.
Councillor Prendergast.
Yes.
Councillor Rice.
Yes.
Councillor Tyson.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. That vote is carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our speaker. You are free to leave us now unless you particularly want to stay.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to item 7, which is Nuppend Farmhouse, Nuppend, Old Nebworth, Hertfordshire. Erection of 1 4-bed and 2 3-bed detached dwellings, including alterations to existing access. And I'm going to invite our officer, Andrew Hunter, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so firstly, there are a couple of updates, which are, there are two small changes to the officer report. Paragraph 4.3.24, that should refer to 3 dwellings, not 4. And paragraph 4.4.1, a bit of text, which is, quote, and to a designate heritage asset, end quote, should be omitted. So now I can move on to the slides.
Which item on the slides are we starting with?
The validation sheet map.
I think it's this one. Apologies if it's wrong.
Oh no, that's the third item on that's the next item on the agenda. It's
we need NUP end item
NUP end
7.
I've not.
Go up a bit more. Yeah, keep going up.
Oh, is it
It's
the ones we
that.
just went through? Oh, there.
No, it's that. Yeah.
That one. Apologies.
Okay, so this site, it shows that the site is in the green belt, and that's in both the adopted and the emerging local plans. It's in a conservation area. The farmhouse to the southwest is a grade 2 listed building. That farmhouse has also been subdivided to 4 dwellings. There is also a detached dwelling to the north named Clovertop. The area is rural. There is a former farm to the south, which has largely been converted to commercial industrial uses, and a small number of dwellings are to the north of the site beyond Clovertop. The site itself has hard standing and is essentially a residential garden in association with the flats in the divided farmhouse. And in the site has also previously developed land in respect of the National Planning Policy Framework, as it is a residential garden outside of a built-up area. The proposal is for 3 new 2-story dwellings with pitched roofs. The dwelling at the front of the site would have 4 bedrooms, and the others would have 3 beds. Access would be using the existing, and each dwelling would have 2 parking spaces, and there would be an additional 1 visitor parking space within the site. This was called in by Councillor Nash to committee if refusal is recommended. So I can now go on to the photos of the site and the surroundings. So that's the wrong way up for some reason. It's the side, but this photo is looking down the access to the site, and then there is a front boundary fence, gates and hedge visible there. So next photo. There's something wrong with the orientation of them. They should be flipped left, like 90 degrees.
Let me have a look, see if I can change that.
Yeah, they're all wrong. Well, those 3 are, it seems.
I don't know if I can change them right now.
Okay, well, I think if it's only just those 3, then that should still be manageable.
Okay.
So let's go back to. So this is looking southwest down Park Lane, just at the entrance to the site, and on the left is a building which is sort of ancillary to the farmhouse. Then the next photo, this is facing the other direction, up Park Lane to the north, and the side that one of the boundary hedges to the site is just on the bottom of the photo. On the next photo, this is within the site itself, facing the south corner, and the southwest and southeast boundaries are visible there. On to the next one. This is facing to the east corner, and you can see some pathways and hard standing parking, as well as lawn areas. Onto photo 6. This is facing southwest, showing the rear of the divided farmhouse, and you can see the boundary of various back gardens, which are part of that property. So photo number 7. This is facing northwest, and the access to the site is visible on the left, sort of in the background, towards the back. Photo number 8. This is facing north, and you can see part of the rear of the dwelling to the north of the site, Clovertop. Next photo. So this is facing northeast towards Clovertop, and the fence on the left is part of the front boundary of the site. And photo number 10. So this is facing towards the northwest corner, and you can see hedge boundaries around this part of the site, and the side of dwelling Clovertop is on the right side of the photo there. So now I can go on to the plans. So this is the site location and also ownership plans there, showing the red and the blue lines. So next photo, this is just showing the application site itself. Next photo, a simple block plan showing the location of the houses and the parking and the internal access road. And next slide. This is a more detailed block plan showing landscaping as well as the various sort of hard surfacing and the proposed houses, showing existing proposed planting. The next slide, the plot A dwelling floor and roof plans, and the elevations for this house are on the next slide. And this is the house at the front of the site. And next slide is plot B. This is the house that is closest to the farmhouse on the south of the site, and this would have 3 bedrooms. So then we go down to the next slide, you can see the elevations. And then next slide, moving on to plot C. This again, the floor and the roof plans. This house is in the southeast corner of the site. And next slide, the elevations of plot C. And that's the end of the drawings. The recommendation is for refusal on 2 grounds, essentially. One is that it conflicts with paragraph 145G of the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, in that it would result in a greater impact on openness of the greenbelt than the existing development on this land, which is previously developed land, and it's therefore inappropriate development and there would also be loss of openness to the green belt. And the other part of the reason for refusal is that the location is not considered to be sustainable, in that occupants would be almost completely reliant on the use of the private car to access shops and services and go to and from the site. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Do members have any questions of clarification for our officer? No. Okay, in which case I shall invite our first speaker, Jeanette Deard, to speak as an objector.
Hello, I'm actually Susie Deard, Jeanette's daughter.
Ah, you're Susie. Okay. Can we see? Can we see you or not?
Yep. We're both together.
Okay, that's great. So you've got 5 minutes. If you're both speaking, it's 5 minutes between you.
Yeah, we'll just do.
Okay.
Thank you very much for allowing us to speak. Thank you. It's the first time we attended one of these meetings, so please excuse our nervousness. We've lived in the house at Clovertop right next door to this property for 40 years. It's a detached property. We've never had anyone overlooking us. It's a very private and peaceful area. There's a lot of wildlife in the area. We understand the need for new housing, but 3 detached houses on this site is very overcrowding and not really in keeping with the other properties in this area. 2 of the proposed houses overlook our garden and into our living area and even into my mum's bedroom, which would have a material impact on our privacy and also the natural light, the layout it is. It would affect the light that we have into our garden and our home. They would definitely have a negative impact on the value of our property, and I expect many of the properties in Nup End would be affected by the new builds. Too many houses. The entrance, it was interesting, the photo of the entranceway makes it look much, much bigger than it is, but it's never ever been used as well, in the 40 years we've been here, it's never been used as an entrance, and it's actually much smaller than it looked on the photo. It's off a very busy road and corners. It comes off a double corner, which actually the bus has to slow down to get round because you can't fit 2 cars around it. So it's quite a dangerous corner for cars to be coming in and out of. Whether they could fit all the cars in the parking that's been proposed, I suspect that they'd end up being parking on the greens outside, and whether anyone would be able to control that, I don't know. It would impact the environment, the hedges, the trees, the grassland, and that orchard as it has been for many, many years. There are already housing developments proposed in both Nebworth, Coddycut. There's one just been finished in Walmer Green. And do we really need more houses outside of these already accepted plans? The waste and the water drainage in this area is not very good already. I'm not sure the strain of any more properties in Nup End could handle. We don't have any mains here. We don't have gas here. So I don't know if it could handle another 3 large properties. Also, as it's been mentioned, it's on conservation land, it's on greenbelt. And we have been told that there's not enough amenities to handle any more housing in Nup End. So 3 more houses would seem very excessive. The local schools are all oversubscribed. The bus routes are infrequent. And as mentioned, there's likely to be at least 2 cars to every property, and you would need cars to get anywhere from this area as it's a rural location. So that's all we have to say. Thank you. We object to the plans.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for our speaker? No. Okay. Thank you very much then.
Thank you.
So I'm now going to invite Councillor Lisa Nash to speak as a member advocate. And welcome, Lisa, and you have 5 minutes.
Sorry, take myself off on mute there. Right, sorry. Okay, so I'm speaking in my role as ward advocate for Mr. Bly, who wishes to build some houses in his back garden, of which he will overlook. For clarity, although the fencing in the photos might have been confusing, which was shown by the planning officer, that site is actually the back garden of the original property. As I'm sure that many of you will be aware, I'm not normally in favour of any development in the Greenbelt. In fact, I'm speaking against the next development proposal, but believe that there are exceptional circumstances in this instance. Having visited the site some months ago, I can attest to the surroundings, which you will have seen from the aerial photos that I believe that Mr. Bly sent you. This land sits next to a business park with parked cars against one boundary. The main house, which has been converted into flats on another boundary, and a road on another. There is already a well-established hedgerow from what I could see, which overlooks the small part of the boundary which does go into the open fields. I therefore believe that this causes no loss of openness of the countryside, as the proposal is to utilise an unused garden which is serving no purpose. Having looked at the site, it did look like it was some distance from the neighbouring property, and I would question whether there was an invasion of privacy, because I think it's far away enough that it wouldn't. There is one other dwelling, and one flat owner who objects, but many of the reasons for objections noted under 3.3 of the report are not valid planning reasons, with some conjuncture around other points, for example, cars parked on the verges. I do find myself confused, though, at the condition of the position that NHD is taking around building on the Greenbelt. You have just approved a scheme which is much larger than this. And when I spoke at this committee in August, the Development and Conservation Manager directed councillors to approve the application for the land at the Potters Heath Road and Danesbury Park Road, despite it encroaching onto the openness of the countryside, with no evidence of it being needed, and which councillor colleagues gave permission for. In December, you approved an application for Slip Lane, which is not a stone's throw from this site, despite objections from both Nebworth and Codicott parish councils and many residents. And yet this site, which also sits in Old Nebworth, was allowed, and that site in December, and that was in an open green space, and yet this site is enclosed and it is being recommended for refusal. It is noteworthy that, considering the vehement views of Nebworth Parish Council against building in the Greenbelt in general, they have not objected to this proposal. Section 13 of the National Planning Policy Framework 2018 stipulates that the essential characteristics of greenbelts is their openness and permanence. This is not, I would argue, this is not altering the greenbelt boundary, which the NPPF warns against us though, and it does not interfere with the openness of it is in a garden. This is someone's back garden, which is mostly surrounded by other structures. My understanding of the policy SP2 of the LEP is that it allows for this type of building. I therefore ask you to please consider approving this proposed building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Any questions from members for our speaker? No. Okay, we'll move on then to our final speaker on this item, Stephen Rice, speaking in support. You welcome, Stephen. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee. My name is Stephen Rice and I'm the planning consultant who prepared and submitted this application. The council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, and decision makers must have regard to the broad magnitude of this shortfall. Appropriate weight should therefore be given to the provision of 3 dwellings on this site. The government published the 2020 housing delivery test figures yesterday, and the council are below the 45% delivery that is required to trigger the most severe penalty, that is the presumption in favour of sustainable development. Where the local authority does not have an up-to-date plan, paragraph 11 of the framework requires decision makers to determine applications in accordance with the stated principles, which include, where policies are out of date, grant permission unless policies in the framework dictate otherwise, or any adverse impacts would significantly outweigh the benefits. Whilst the site is located within the Greenbelt, it is located on land that is classified as previously developed or brownfield. We have referred to a High Court decision regarding an application for residential development in a garden attached to a farmhouse in Dartford, Kent. This situation was very similar to this application. The court determined that permission should be granted, as although the proposed development would reduce the openness, it would do so by a limited degree. And having regard to the lawful domestic use of the garden, permitted development rights could be exercised that might have a very similar effect. The conclusions reached by the planning inspector, which were upheld by the court, are, we believe, very important when considering this application. When considering the planning balance, the inspector noted that the proposal would be an appropriate development within the Greenbelt, and that under the framework, substantial weight should be given to any harm. However, the inspector also concluded that there would be a limited reduction in openness due to the fact that the site was an existing garden, and permitted development rights would allow certain forms of development within it. Furthermore, the site was well contained, being immediately adjacent to existing buildings. Importantly, the inspector concluded that there would be no conflict with the purposes of the Greenbelt and no harm to the character and appearance of the area, subject to implementation of a landscaping scheme. In their final analysis, they concluded that these considerations clearly outweighed the totality of the harm that would arise, including the conflict of the broad policy aim of protecting the Greenbelt. We believe that a similar conclusion would be reached by an inspector if we have to appeal this site. In this case, the inspector is also likely to take account of the fact that the council is failing to deliver sufficient new homes, and this development will make a valuable contribution to this shortfall. Please refer back to the paragraph in the framework that I referred to previously, that permission should be granted unless adverse impacts significantly outweigh the benefits. Taking the above into account, do they? The photographs that we circulated to all committee members prior to this meeting confirms that the site is well contained. A landscaping scheme is to be implemented between the existing farmhouse and the proposed new dwelling. The existing vegetation to the west and north will be allowed to grow taller, and the site is already well contained to the east and southeast by the industrial park. The proposed development is not in an unsustainable location. It's located within an existing settlement with access to public transport. Furthermore, facilities such as a railway station, schools, shops, etc. are only a short walk or cycle away in Nebworth. The site is only 170 metres away from a site in Old Nebworth that was permitted for residential development by this committee last month. It's much closer to the bus stop than the other site, and the permitted site was considered to be in a sustainable location. Policy 145E of the framework permits residential development in the Greenbelt where it constitutes limited infilling in villages. It seems odd that a site some 170 metres away on the same road is considered to lie in the village of Old Nebworth, even though it is located within the parish of Codicott. Yet this application isn't considered to lie within Old Nebworth. Not only is this site within the Old Nebworth Village Conservation Area, the address of the site in this report is Nuppend, Old Nebworth. When determining the previous application for 4 dwellings, the officer commented that a scheme of 4 dwellings would have an unacceptable impact on the conservation area. It was therefore considered part of the settlement when it was helpful to the refusal, but it isn't considered part of the settlement when this will be helpful in granting permission.
4.5 minutes, Chair.
This is a very important point, as the recommendation for refusal appears to be based on whether the site can be considered as part of Old Nebworth or not. The fact that the site and the farmhouse are included in the Old Nebworth Conservation Area provides historical evidence that the site forms part of the Old Nebworth village. If that's the case, paragraph 145E of the framework applies and permission should be granted. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions for our speakers? Speaker? No, not at the moment. Okay, in which case I'm going to invite our officer, Andrew Hunter, to address any of the issues that have been raised.
Okay, well, I'll try my best. So starting with Susie Deards, in terms of overlooking, the dwellings wouldn't have any first floor side windows facing Clovertop. The only windows, they would have front elevation windows, but they would be, or front and rear windows, but they would be facing down the site rather than providing any direct views of Clovertop. So I don't consider that there would be any loss of privacy. The the County Council Highways Officer didn't raise any objections or concerns to the proposal, so I don't think I'm not of the view that there would be any risk in terms of impacts on the public highway. Then there would be only very limited impacts on ecology given the nature of the site, and I don't think there would be any harm. In terms of infrastructure and sewerage, I mean, those aren't really material considerations for this. So now I'll go on to the to Councillor Nash and Stephen Rice's presentations. In terms of the point relating to why it's an appropriate development in the Greenbelt, we need to first of all look at the site in isolation and take into account what is there at the moment in terms of whether any proposed development would cause loss of openness. And in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework, it's under paragraph 145, which concerns new buildings. In this case, the site doesn't have any buildings on it. It's essentially open with some hard standing and lawn, and the addition of 3 new dwellings here would result in a significantly greater loss of openness than the existing, the existing site, which is undeveloped in terms of buildings or structures. Then in terms of housing supply, it's only 3 dwellings are proposed here, so that would only make a very limited contribution, and that wouldn't be significant enough, in my view, to overcome the harm that would be caused to the Greenbelt. In reference to the other decisions made, the Potters Heath one, I believe, related to a gypsy and traveller site, according to one of my colleagues, who has informed me, and therefore the planning considerations are very different to this case. And I'm not entirely sure of the circumstances behind the old Nebworth site that has been stated as being approved last month, but there may be different circumstances relating to that than this particular site. And in terms of sustainability and access to and being reliant on the private car, this site isn't connected really to, isn't well connected to the outside or to other areas in terms of provision for pedestrians and cyclists. There aren't any footpaths or pedestrian walkways outside the site to provide safe access, and cycling isn't necessarily and that also applies to cycling infrastructure as well. And also I would point out that the existing garden doesn't have permitted development rights available because the properties at the 4 properties in the converted farmhouse are flats rather than dwellings, and flats don't have permitted development rights available for outbuildings. In any case, the 3 houses that are proposed would be 2 stories, and they would be obviously much greater in excess than what permitted development rights would allow for if they did exist. those are my answers.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So let's move to the debate then. Who would like to speak? Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm struggling with the officer's recommendation on this one, to be quite honest. I've looked back at the previous applications on this site, and there were 3 reasons for approval in there. One was the inappropriate development in the greenbelt. The other one was size, mount, siting, design, bulk and scale would result in an urbanised cramped form development. And the third one was siting and design harm and amenity to the neighbouring dwellings. However, this time around, we're only refusing on the reasons for refusal. There is only one, and that is the impact on the openness of the greenbelt. I didn't get the aerial photos, but I have looked at it on Google Earth, as we can't go and visit at the moment, really. And I'm struggling to see how it impacts on the openness. It's surrounded by trees, quite high hedges. There's an enormous great industrial estate just over the fence from it. There's other houses surrounding it. It's an very enclosed, quite an enclosed site. You can't really see it from ground level looking on the photos or anything, or on the Google Earth stuff. I'm really struggling to see how it impacts on the openness. The only way you would see it normally is from a satellite view. Yes, it is in the green belt. Does it impact on the openness? I'm struggling with that one. The officer said it's only 3 houses, but any houses are good at the moment, to be perfectly honest. I'd like to hear a bit more from other members. I'm really struggling to find a reason to find that it is inappropriate and that it impacts on the openness. I'm really struggling with that reason.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. I've got Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Levitt. Having looked through all of the report, if the main issue is the openness, I can't see that this makes a massive change from having a private garden that's not accessible to people to having houses that are not accessible to people. As far as I'm concerned, I'm actually going to put forward that we vote against the suggestion and vote in favour of building these houses.
Okay, thank you. I'll see. Is there anybody who would? No. Let me move to Councillor Nguala first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask that within the paperwork, within the report, it talks about advice, the planning officer working proactively with the applicants and advice being given in order that the application could be granted, and that the advice was refused. So I'm just thinking that maybe there's room for further consideration here, in that if there is advice that could well have been accepted, and why wasn't it? And then perhaps it could go through without appeals and what have you going on at a later stage.
Thank you. Can I invite our officer to respond to that? Andrew?
That's the informative that's on the proactive statement.
Yeah. So did they not take the advice that was being offered? Is that one of the issues?
I'd have to look back, but I think there might have been. I think there was pre-app advice where where we suggested that the proposed development would be likely to be issues with it in principle. That was back in 2016. That was something I didn't deal with, and I wasn't at the council at this time.
Okay.
I did have a look at it previously. I seem to recall that that advice was more negative. I'm just having a look at the details. Funnily enough, it was actually my colleague Tom Allington that actually handled that pre-app.
Okay.
So I don't know if Tom recalls anything.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Tom, are you able to comment or not?
I'm afraid not. Sorry, it was at least 3.5 years ago.
Yes.
Recorded.
Yep.
I wouldn't expect you to remember. Okay, thank you very much for trying. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one small point. I've noticed through some of the submissions tonight, we're being reminded about planning applications that we either passed or refused. Now, in my opinion, that's got nothing to do with the one that we're looking at now. And we can pass one and refuse one, and that's dependent on the committee whether they think it's right or proper. I think here, there's one simple fact I can't get over is development in the Greenbelt. And always in my mind, there has to be special circumstances. Well, I can't see any special circumstances for building these buildings in somebody's back garden in the Greenbelt. And in this particular instance, I do agree with the actual officer. I probably agree with Councillor Levitt. I think it was a little bit restrictive in the actual planning refusal. But there again, officers have to make their mind up whether they think what they're putting in that is defendable. And I feel probably in this case, maybe the officer might like to comment as to why he didn't put the other conditions in that were in the original refusal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunter. Andrew, are you able to comment on why you didn't include the further conditions that were in the previous refusal?
Yes, I felt that by removing one of by reducing the number of houses from 4 down to 3, that would have resulted in a more spacious form of development that would be better reflective of its surroundings, notwithstanding impacts on the Greenbelt, and also by removing one of the 4 houses, this development now has resulted in a better relationship with its neighbours, and that therefore there isn't I don't have a reason to recommend refusal based on loss of neighbour amenity, which was the case with the previous application. So this now has effectively just resulted in the reason relating to Greenbelt and the sustainability of the location.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay, our planning officer, Tom Allington, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide, hopefully, a bit of clarity when it comes to matters of the Greenbelt, obviously, which is several views have been put forward tonight. Just referring to the MPPF, it does state that under paragraph 143, inappropriate development is, by definition, harmful to the Greenbelt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. As my colleague Andrew has outlined, under the exceptional circumstances, potentially development is allowed or is considered appropriate on previously developed land, as long as there's no additional harm to the openness of the Greenbelt. As you probably saw from the photographs, the land at the moment is relatively devoid of development. It's open. Openness, without trying to avoid giving a, shall we say, a Oxford Dictionary definition, is the lack of built development, effectively. This proposal provides 3 two-storey dwellings on what is currently open. I think what Councillor Levitt referred to earlier in terms of not being able to see it, that would, shall we say, refer to the visual openness. Okay, there might not be a huge degree of visual openness or harm to in this regard, but there would still be a significant amount of built development on land which is currently devoid of development. So there would be harm to the openness of the greenbelt in that regard. Under the MPPF, that should be given significant weight, effectively. And as Councillor Hunter mentioned, to allow development in the greenbelt which is inappropriate, you need to be able to demonstrate very special circumstances. In Andrew's view, in my view, I think there is a lack of very special circumstances to overcome that relatively high bar in terms of the significant weight we give to the inappropriate development. I won't go into the other cases which were referred to by Mr. Rice. I'm not overly familiar with them, but it is, of course, each case on its own merits. I will probably leave it there. I just wanted to make that clear to members. Thank you.
Thank you for your clarification. Okay, so I've got, Councillor Hunter, can I just ask, were you proposing that we accept the officer's recommendation?
I'm quite happy to do that, Chairman, but I'm wondering whether Councillor Levitt wanted to say something.
I will come to him first, of course. Yes, okay, thank you. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. I've not got much further forward. Dan's put a proposal forward to approve. At the moment, he hasn't got a seconder, and we're not really moving forward very much. I've listened to the arguments and that, and I think I'm tending to agree with Councillor Hunter, actually, that there are no very special circumstances. Whilst I can see the arguments about yes, it is 3 houses, my own argument, but yes, it is 3 houses. I can see the points about the openness. But I can't see any very special circumstances. And that's what you really need to approve a development in the Greenbelt, which this is. I was going to second Dan's, but I don't think I can at the moment, purely because of that. I have my reservations about refusing it, but I don't think I can. I don't think I can second the proposal to approve. So I'm not going to see if we can see if anybody else wishes to second Councillor Allen's or Councillor Hunter's proposals first.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Levitt. So would anybody like to second Councillor Hunter's proposal to accept the officer's recommendation? Councillor Rice.
I'm pleased to second that, Chair.
Councillor, so to support the officer's recommendation?
Support the officer's recommendation.
Okay.
For the reasons stated by the officer.
Okay, so if no one else wishes to speak, it's your last chance. I don't see any hands up. Then let's go to the vote. So we have a proposer and a seconder to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much for the motion moved by Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Rice to accept the officer's recommendation for the reasons stated in the report. I will call out your surnames if you could respond with for, against or abstain as before. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Against.
Councillor Hewson.
For.
Councillor Hunter.
For.
Councillor Levitt.
Abstain.
Councillor Nguala.
For.
Councillor Prendergast.
For.
Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Tyson.
For.
Thank you very much, Chair. That vote is carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our speakers. You are free to leave us now unless you wish to stay. Councillor Nash is staying. You'll be here for the next item as well. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8 then, which is Keeper's Cottage, Rustling End, Codicott, Hitchin. It's for the change of use and conversion of an existing swimming pool, outbuilding and garage into 1 3-bed dwelling. Erection of detached garage block with carer flat above following demolition of existing stables, greenhouse and outbuilding. Amended by plans received 3rd of July 20 and 11th of December 20. Please, I'd like to invite Andrew Hunter, our officer, to present the report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So there are no updates to report, so we can move on to the slides, please. Okay, so starting with policy considerations, in the adopted local plan, the site is in the rural area beyond the green belt. In the emerging local plan, the site is in the green belt, is proposed to be in the green belt. The dwelling to the northwest is a grade 2 listed building. The site itself contains a 2-storey dwelling towards the front, with outbuildings, a manege, and more open equestrian paddocks to the south. The character of the wider area is generally rural, comprising of woodland and fields, with the house to the northwest being the only dwelling nearby. The proposal is for a change of use and conversion of an existing detached outbuilding, which includes a swimming pool and a garage, into 1 3-bed dwelling, and there are some associated small-scale external alterations to essentially provide some new openings and small changes of that nature. There would be a detached L-shaped garage building with a carer flat above, sited on the existing manege. The dwelling is proposed to be occupied by the applicant and their registered disabled daughter, and the carer flat is proposed to be in association with providing care for the daughter. The proposal would result in a new dwelling and its cursonage separate from the existing dwelling, separated by a 2-metre high flint and brick wall. The existing access to the northwest of the site would be used. 2 buildings would be removed as part of the proposal, and there will also be new landscaping and planting. So this was called in to committee by Councillor Nash in support of the parish council objection. So I can now go on to the photos of the site and the surroundings. So this is looking into the site from the existing access. And then you can see the entrance gate and post and rail fencing there. Next photo. This is from the manege, which is looking in the opposite direction towards the access for the proposed house. Photo number 3. This is looking east from the manege to the dwelling, which is in the centre of the photo. It's a bit obscured by trees, but you can make it out. Photo number 4. This is the west of the building to be converted. Next photo. This is a clearer view of the existing dwelling. and outbuildings again from the manage. Photo 6. This is looking south from the manage, and you can see the open equestrian paddocks behind the site. Photo number 7, the back of the manage, and you can also see part of the rear of the building to be converted, and again more paddocks and woodland beyond. Photo 8. This shows more of the rear of the swimming pool building. Photo 9. This is the northeast of that building, which is of the part of the swimming pool section. Photo 10. This shows where the swimming pool building is joined onto the garages element. Photo 11. This sort of just shows the garages itself. Photo 12. This shows the rear of the swimming pool and the garages. Photo 13. This is a view showing a wider view of the back of the building, and behind that you can see part of the main house itself. So number 14. This is the southeast side of the pool building. Next photo. This is another view of the north elevation of the building, showing the garages. Photo 16. This is another view of the main house, and you can see the building to be converted is on the right of the photo. The stairwell being the most visible part. Photo 17. This shows the pool building on the left and the main house on the right. So now I can go on to the plans. So this is an existing plan of the site and wide land in ownership of the applicant. So if you go to the next plan, that shows this to a larger scale of the existing site and land ownership, with the site in red there. Then this is the existing site block plan, and showing the existing house towards the middle bottom of that drawing, and it also shows the outbuildings and the various sort of landscaping and the manage of the house itself. Next photo. This is of a floor and a roof plan of the pool building, and the elevations of this building are on the next slide. So then we can go on to the proposed plans. So this is a proposed plan of a proposed plan at a larger scale. So, and then here it is a bit closer up, and then on the left side you can see the proposed garage building with the carer flats and the new house on the right. Then on the next plan you can see a clearer view of the site with the garage carer building on the right, the new house or the converted new house on the left, with the existing house and its proposed remaining curtilage on the on the left-hand side of that screen of that plan. You can also make out new proposed or new landscaping for the new house, particularly on the around the proposed boundary, and sort of in place of where the existing manage is. Then onto the next plan. This shows the floor and roof plans that are proposed for the building to be converted, and the elevations are on the next slide. And on the slide after that are the plans for the garage building, and that's the end of the plans, and the recommendation is to grant permission. That's it.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Levitt, do you have a question for our officer?
I want to raise sort of a procedural point of order, Chair.
Yes.
And it's about why we're seeing this application at committee.
It's been called in.
It's been called in, and it says a valid written opinion of Mebworth Parish Council, details which are included, paragraph 3.4. 3.4. The only reason for calling it is inappropriate development in the green belt. But it's not in the green belt.
Not currently, but it's proposed to be in the green belt under the emerging local plan.
Yeah, but I'm struggling to see why we've called it in. Yes, it's here now, so we've got to see it. But it's not a valid reason because it's not in the green belt. It might be, but it's not a valid reason for calling. Sorry, Chair.
Yes. No, I do hear what you're saying, I did have this discussion with Simon Ellis on Monday that regarding what is the position when it's not under the adopted local plan, it's not in the green belt, but under the emerging local plan, which has not yet been adopted, it is proposed to be in the green belt, and it's a bit of a grey area, I think, is the answer. So it is before us tonight, so we are going to determine it by committee. We're here now, but I do understand your comment. Are there any questions for the officer? Councillor Tyson. You're on mute, Councillor Tyson.
Just to say thanks to Andrew for the presentation. I did notice that there was one slight inconsistency between the one of the paragraphs in the report and one of the conditions. Again, it's to do with the electric vehicle charging points. Sorry, it's not an obsession of mine, but I did notice that in paragraph 4332 of the report, it says that there should be charging points installed at both the converted dwelling and the carer's flat. But in condition 6, it's just that fairly standard wording now, which is in the singular, saying that the proposed new dwelling shall incorporate an electric vehicle ready domestic charging point, but there's no mention of the other development, the carer's flat also being equipped with one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tyson. So 4.3.32, what I'm reading is to assist in achieving these aims, an electric vehicle charging points will be conditioned to be installed on each of the proposed new dwellings. Does that mean the carer flat and the converted swimming pool, though? I wondered if that's what it meant. Andrew, could you respond to that, please?
Yes, that is what that refers to, the carer flat building and the converted dwelling. So we could amend the condition 6 to reflect that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Nguala.
Thank you, Chair. Given that we're going to be talking about Greenbelt in a minute, I think that's the objection. I just wanted to look at this issue so that we can be really clear about it. And within the report, I just wonder if the officer can reiterate this, that under 4.3.13, the extension should not there should not be a major extension and do not have materially greater impact on the openness. And I think it's because the new building is subordinate to the old building and doesn't have too greater impact. Am I right in thinking that?
From what I've read, the replacement for the swimming pool is of a very similar what's the word I'm looking for, but it's a similar size footprint. That's the word I'm looking for. But the carer flat is garage is slightly bigger than the existing one and the buildings that were going to be removed. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yeah, in terms of sort of like floor space and footprint, the garage building, when you take into account the buildings that would be removed, would be approximately 25% larger than the building to be converted.
Yeah, so approximately 25% bigger. So it's slightly bigger, but not hugely so. Okay, thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Councillor Nguala? Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. Okay, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like a bit of clarification. Back to the Greenbelt, please. What is Andrew's view? We are asked to pass this, and I want to know, to help me make a decision, whether the officers consider this is in the Greenbelt or it's not in the Greenbelt.
Okay, Andrew, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I have considered that quite carefully. My view is that more weight should be given to the fact that the site is in the rural area beyond the green belt, because the emerging local plan hasn't reached a stage yet where we can give the proposed designation as being green belt significant weight or more weight than the present adopted local plan designation. So essentially, from my view is that we should give precedence to the site as being in the rural area beyond the green belt and not the green belt.
Okay, thank you very much. Tom Allington.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just to elaborate a little bit on Andrew's clarification. Yeah, as Andrew said, more weight needs to be put on what is the adopted local plan. The alternative, look at it this way, the alternative is that we recommend that this application be refused because it's harmful to the Greenbelt. As Councillor Levitt has pointed out, it simply isn't in the Greenbelt as it stands at the moment. So my view, my professional view would be that that would be an unreasonable reason for refusal. There could be further issues there if we were to go down that route, because, like I say, put simply, it's not in the Greenbelt at this current time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, if there are no further questions for our officer, I will move on to our registered speaker and invite Councillor Nash to speak as a member advocate.
Yeah, can I just say it's a real shame. It would have been really nice if this conversation had happened before tonight, because as far as Nebworth Parish Council are concerned, this is in the Greenbelt, and they're very adamant. So, please can you note that for future, rather than have that discussion now, which I don't feel particularly comfortable that it's about that we needed to have discussed it more. And I could have gone back to the parish council and discussed it further with them. So I am speaking here tonight as a ward councillor on behalf of Nebworth Parish Council, who objected to this on the basis that they feel it does sit within the Greenbelt and that there are no special circumstances for which it should be granted. The proposal significantly reduces the plot size of the existing dwelling, And the parish council considered that the conversion of the buildings to residential as inappropriate development, creating a residential footprint which is disproportionate to the original building and therefore will impact significantly to the surroundings. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to say really, because we're at loggerheads as to whether or not this is in the green belt. So perhaps you could just take into account this. I will go back to the parish council and speak to them. But yeah, please take into account the imprint size of the building, which is a significantly bigger footprint, and the parish council, obviously, you know, the openness of the rural area, which they believe to be green belt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Are there any questions for Councillor Nash? I've got Councillor Allen.
Hello, Councillor Nash. Why do they believe this to be in the green belt when it's not?
Well, they stated it was, and I've not now got the opportunity to go and ask them.
Okay, well, we've been assured by the people that.
No, I hear that, but you know, it's a bit late, isn't it, to be bringing this up at this stage in the you know, this discussion.
It shouldn't have come this far. It is a waste of time.
Yeah, but this, you know, this should have been raised. I mean, Daniel, this should have been raised with me before, and it hasn't.
Well, it's in the
waste of my time as well.
Yeah, it's in the paperwork. It's something that can be read in advance.
But they're adamant that it is. So they're you know, that's what needed to have happened.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we are where we are, and you've made the points that you've made. We've now been it's been confirmed to us that it is not currently in the green belt, and of course, if it went to appeal on a green belt ground, the inspector would say, well, it's not in the green belt. So, well, that's what I'm assuming. But we can learn this lesson. Hopefully, that this clarification would ideally have come earlier. Shall we go to the debate then? Who would like to speak? I've got Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Greenbelt issues set aside and when it should have been done. I think that needs to be looked at as to why it was actually allowed to come to us in the first place. Is the decision of the proper officer, whether something's allowed on the agenda or not. And I think that's something that needs to be taken up outside of this meeting, Chair, as to why the parish council wasn't actually notified when they put that objection in, that it's not actually in the green belt.
Okay, I will follow that up.
All that said, it's not in the green belt, therefore it can't be inappropriate development. Is it appropriate in a rural area under green belt? It's slightly bigger than what's there. There's other objections being raised about the size of the garage. Do they really need 6 cars? That's not a planning consideration. Might collect classic cars, whatever. It's not a planning consideration. If we were to refuse it for any reason and it went to appeal and the applicant would have a really good grounds for appeal, I think we'd lose and we'd have substantial costs awarded to us for actually going that far. I move the recommendation to approve, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. Councillor Hunter.
Sorry, is that working, Chairman?
Yes.
It didn't come off when I pressed the button, so I thought I was still muted. Yeah, I've got a question for the officer. There was 1 or 2 things about the conditions I wanted to ask about. Concerning the fact I couldn't see the normal details of materials, and I couldn't see any construction management condition. I wonder if he can enlighten me.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, are you able to respond to that?
I mean, there's no construction management plan condition because the development is I consider it to be small in scale, and construction would take place well away from the public highway. There also weren't any such recommendations by the County Council Highways Authority, who usually would recommend construction management plan conditions if they deem necessary, and they didn't in this case, so I didn't think one was justified here. And then in terms of materials, the materials are sort of shown essentially they're stated as what they would be on the proposed plans. So for me, that was sufficient to not need a condition requiring those details to be submitted. But so I'll leave it to the committee whether they would wish to attach such a condition in this case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hunter, are you satisfied with that, or would you like to attach a condition on materials?
It's just a question of whether or not the officer is happy with that. I can understand the construction management plan now, because that's normally conditioned through highways. So I've had it confirmed that they're happy, effectively. And if the officer's happy with not having it there and allowing it to be just off the plan, but obviously if they decided to build it out of something else, they could. Just a thought, Chairman.
Well, would you like to put a condition in, propose to put a condition in to make it belt and braces that the materials have to be approved?
I don't think it's a difficult thing for the officer just to rubber stamp the materials when they come to actually build it. So yes, let's put a condition in, Chairman.
So can I ask our officer to include an additional condition regarding the materials, that they'll need to have approval to make sure they do use the materials as stated in the plans?
Yes, I can do that.
You can add that, can you, Andrew?
Yep, I will be able to add that. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Seeing I've still got my hand up, Chairman, I'll be happy to second Councillor Levitt, I think it was, with the amended condition 6 and the added condition.
Okay, amended condition 6.
The EV condition.
The EV condition. Did we talk about that?
Councillor Tyson did.
Oh, Councillor Tyson did. Okay, yes, absolutely. Sorry, that felt like a long time ago. Okay, so with the amended condition on the EV charging point and an additional condition around the materials, I've got Councillor Rice just before we go to the vote.
If we're talking about conditions and belt and braces, condition 7, it states that bat and bird survey mitigation report by Ecology Solutions shall be implemented as set out in the report, including a minimum of 6 bird nesting boxes. In the report, the CPRE actually lists those as swallow nest bowls. So are we asking for any type of bird box, or are we specifying as part of the CPRE swallow nest bowls?
Andrew, would you mind answering that?
They're 6 bird nesting boxes rather than bowls, which are specified in the reports. And I mean, this condition is based on the advice from Hertfordshire Ecology, who were happy with the measures proposed to mitigate any potential impacts on wildlife and ecology.
Okay, so what is set out in condition 7 is as proposed by Hertfordshire Ecology. You satisfied with that, Councillor Rice?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
As long as the swallows are happy.
Don't think we can ask them, that's the problem, isn't it? Okay, so we have a proposer. Councillor Levitt has proposed that we support the officer recommendation to grant, and Councillor Hunter has seconded with those 2 amended condition 6 under the EV and the additional one for the materials. Can we please go to the vote?
We'll move directly to the vote with the motion as stated. I'll just call out your surnames. Councillor Allen.
4.
Brown.
4.
Bryant.
4.
Derbyshire.
4.
Hewson.
4.
Hunter.
4.
Levitt.
4.
Nguala.
4.
Prendergast,
4.
Rice,
4.
Tyson.
4.
Thank you very much, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of the items. I don't believe there are any appeals listed. So with that, I'll wish you a very good night. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our officers. I think most, and our speakers, and most of whom have gone. And thank you, and have a good evening. What remains of it?
Good night. Thank you.
The next one, 10th of February.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night. I think you did a good job tonight, everyone, particularly under the circumstances.
Lewis, can I just confirm that we're no longer broadcasting?